Hello everyone, I'm Siddharthan. In the previous video, we have seen how we can deploy a machine learning model as an API. And in that case, we have deployed our API in localhost, so we can only access it. And in this video, I want to show you how you can deploy your machine learning model as a public API. So public API in the sense anyone on the internet can access your API through URL and they can use it for their purpose. So in the previous video, we have deployed our diabetes prediction model, which can tell whether a person is diabetic or not based on few input features. So the end result we get is once we deploy this model as this public API, so we get a URL and anyone can post this input feature to this API in order to find whether a person is diabetic or not. So this is how all these things work, and we are going to do this completely on Google Colaboratory. Okay, and for deploying this we are going to use this ngrok. Okay, so this ngrok module is used in order to create proxy urls for us. Okay, and for creating apis we will be using FastAPI library. And if you haven't watched the previous video, please watch that one. I'm going to use the same code that we have used there. Okay, where we have created this API using FastAPI, which is as the endpoint diabetes underscore prediction. So we will be using the same code. So if you don't watch that particular video, you might not understand what we are doing here. Okay, so I'll give the link for that video in this video description and in the cards as well, so please go through that video first. Okay, so the requirements for this video is you need the model file. Okay, so the model that we are working on is diabetes prediction model. Okay, and if you run this collab file you will get that diabetes model. So I have this file here which is diabetes underscore model dot sav. Okay, so I've explained in the previous video as well, so I have given the same collab file. So you just have to upload this diabetes.csv dataset file. Okay, so you can see this file. So I'll also share the link of this dataset file. So all you have to do is go to this files. Once your system is connected here, upload this dataset file which is diabetes.csv. So let me show you how this works. So upload it from here. So I'll go to my desktop and upload this diabetes.csv. Okay, so once this file is uploaded, so now we have to run all the cells. Come to runtime and run all. So this will generate this diabetes model.sav. So this is where we are saving the file. So we are using this pickle library and saving this diabetes model.sav. So we have seen this in the previous video as I have told you. So this is the model file that we need. So go to this option and download this. And this is the file that we have to upload in this particular collaboratory. Okay, so I have this diabetes underscore model.sav file. So I'll open this second collab file where I'm going to build my API. So I'll connect my system and I'll upload the saved model. Okay, so let's wait for it to connect. Okay, now I'll upload this diabetes model.sav file, which is my trained machine learning model for diabetes prediction. Okay, and these are all the libraries that you need. I'll also give the link for this collaboratory file as well, so you can just run the cells. So we have the libraries like FastAPI, which is used for creating this apis, and ubicon acts as the server and so on, and pickle is for loading the saved model. pydantic we use it in order to structure the format in which we are going to need the data. Okay, so these are all the parameters that we need. And then we have this uh, scikit-learn, which is used for this modeling thing, and we have this request. Okay, which is like for posting the urls and so on. And then we have this json. So the reason we are using this json library is this data will be posted to us in the form of a json object. Okay, so we have to convert this back to dictionary, which we are doing here. So for that we are using this json library. And then we have this ngrok and nest async io. So I'll explain you why we need all these things. So once you run the cells, all these libraries will be installed. So it will take a few minutes. Okay, and then we are like importing all these libraries here. And one of the things that we are importing is this cors middleware. So this is also very important. Okay, so as I've told you in the previous video, the main idea of deploying a machine learning model as an API is we have to integrate this with UI. So we can build our UI with tools like React.js and other UI tools. So we have to integrate this API with those UI tools. And the reason we are like using this course middleware is, so if we don't perform a procedure, so this is what we do. And if you don't run this particular cell, it will give you a course error. So this will happen only when you're integrating this with the UI. So CORS means cross origin resource sharing. Okay, so this is to allow the domain to use our API. So when I say this asterisk symbol, it will allow all the domains. I can also specify like only specified domains, so only they can access it. So these are like a bit advanced, but you need this when you are integrating this with the UI. Okay, so you can just use this same code, but in this case it is not necessary, but it is good to know this. Okay, so now I have installed all the libraries that I need. Now I'll run this cell in order to import the libraries that we need. And now we are creating an instance of this fast API and saving this in this app. Okay, so I'll run this cell as well. And this is for us to give this permission for this course. And I'll run this as well. So this order should be the same. And then this is the format in which we will be passing the data. So I'll change this P to capital P. So in this format, the API will be requiring the data. So I'll run this cell as well. So we are importing this base model from this pydantic library. Again, I have explained this in the previous video as well. And in this cell, we are loading the saved model, which is our diabetes underscore model dot sav. Okay, so I'll run this one, and we are saving this model in the variable called as diabetes underscore model. And we can also load this model within this API. So this is the API that we have created. We can also load this model within this API. But the problem with that is each time our API is running, or each time our API is being called, it will like load the model, which is unnecessary. Okay, so hence we are like loading the model before creating this API. Okay, and this is the app that we have created, which is app.post. App is equal to fast API, and we are mentioning the method post. Post means we have to post a few values to our API. So these values are nothing but these things. Okay, so the input parameters that the model need for prediction, and out of these, BMI and diabetes pedigree function are floating point values. Okay, so if you open your dataset file, which is diabetes.csv, you can see that this BMI and diabetes pedigree function. So these two are in the form of decimal points or floating points. Hence, we mention this as float. Okay, so BMI and diabetes pedigree function is float, and the remaining things will be integer values. Okay, and first we are like loading this dictionary. So the data that we receive will be in the form of JSON, and in these two lines we are converting this JSON data into a dictionary. Okay, and then we are like extracting all these details from this dictionary, and storing it in a list. Okay, so we have this pregnancy, glucose, BP, and so on. So these are nothing but the values that we have here. So except this outcome, so this outcome is what we are trying to predict. Okay, so we have from pregnancies all the way up to age. So these are all the variables for it. So once we extract all these details from this dictionary, we have to pass it to our machine learning model in order to make our prediction. This is what happens here. Okay, and if the label is 0, we have to say the person is not diabetic, and if the label is 1, we have to say the person is diabetic. So that's why we use this if else condition. Okay, and if you go to this file where we have like generated this model, we have this 0 and 1, where 0 is non-diabetic and 1 is diabetic. So that's why we have created a if statement like this. Okay, and this is the input parameter. So this is what the API will receive as the data, and this is nothing but model input. So what we are doing here is we are mentioning what is the format in which we will get the data. So that is the purpose for mentioning this. So the final result that you get will be a URL. Okay, and with that URL we have to mention this endpoint. So that will be our final API. Okay, so I'll run this cell as well, and this is the code snippet in order to create our public URL. So we have seen that we have, did the same thing previously in Spider, where we have deployed this fast API in our local host. So when you do that in localhost, others cannot access it, right? So only you can say it. In order to rectify that, we have like using this pi and Ngrok, but this is more of a temporary solution. Okay, uh, in order to deploy this as a permanent URL or link, we have to go with options like Heroku or other hosting platforms, but we will discuss about that in the next video. But for now, let's try to understand how this can be done in Google Colaboratory itself. Okay, so after running all these cells, so run this last cell. So this will give you your public URL. So this is the port in which your API will be hosted in local, and that is what we have seen in the previous video itself. Now let's try to get our public URL. Yeah, so this is running in this particular port in localhost, and this is the public URL. Okay, so I'll copy this link. So this is nothing but a proxy URL for our local host. So you can run this in your own machine itself, but I prefer doing that on Google Colab. So you can also try this on Google Colab. Now I have like copied this link. Now we can test our API. So we have seen in this previous video as well, where we have implemented this API. So this is the local host in which we were building it on the previous video, and this is the endpoint for it, and we are like passing these values. So these are the values for a person who is not diabetic. So if I open this diabetes.csv file, this is the data that we have passed. For this values, the outcome should be 1, and it would say that that person is not diabetic. So we are going to do the same thing, but in this case we are going to use a proxy URL that Ngrok has generated for us. And the last thing we have to include here is the endpoint. So the endpoint is nothing but what we have mentioned here. So this should be in quotes, and there should be a forward slash here. So this is very important. So I'll copy this and paste it here. Okay. Yeah, now let's try to understand what we are doing here. So I'm importing this JSON and request library. So I'm mentioning this URL is equal to this. So this is where our API is being hosted now, or it is being deployed. And I have to post these values to my API. Okay. So these are nothing but the same data format that we have mentioned here. So all the case and all the words should be same. So we have pregnancy, glucose, blood pressure, skin thickness, insulin, BMI, diabetes, pedigree function, and age. So based on these values, our model should predict whether a person has diabetes or not. So that's what I have mentioned here. The only difference is we have mentioned all these values, and we have also seen that BMI and diabetes pedigree function should be a floating point value. Okay, so we are mentioning this URL and we are posting these values to our URL. So how we are doing this is, now this is in the form of a dictionary, right? And this dictionary should be converted to a JSON object, because our API will receive only JSON object. Okay, so that's what we have done by using this post method. So we have to like post these values to our API, and here I'm converting my dictionary into a JSON object using JSON.dumps, and then I'm creating a variable called as response. So response is equal to request. So this is the request library that we have using, and make sure that you have installed this JSON and request library. I have also shown how you can install these libraries in your machine. And yeah, so request dot post. So there are like two main methods that we have in API. One is get and the another one is post. So here we are using this post method, and the parameters that we have to mention are the URL to which we have to post the data, and the JSON file which we have to post. So JSON or the JSON object which we have to post to this API. Okay, so this will give you the end result for it. So okay, so response dot text. So the final answer that we should get is the person is not diabetic, because that is the data that we have copied here. Okay, so let's try to run this and see. And not only you, anyone can use this URL, and they can like write this code and see whether a person is diabetic or not. Okay, so I'll run this one. Okay, so there is some error. I can like go to this and see what is that particular error is. Okay, pregnancy. Okay, so I stop this deployment. Okay, so you can just click this in order to interrupt this. So the reason we are getting this error is, so we have changed this P to capital P, right? So we didn't make that change here, so that's why we get this error. So I'll put this as capital P. Now I'll run this again, and I'll run this deployment code snippet as well. Again, this will generate a new URL for me. Yeah, so this is the public URL that we have. Now I'll copy this. So each time you run this, your like URL will change. So I'll copy this link address and paste it here. Okay, so I'll replace this one. So our endpoint will remain the same. Okay, now let's try to run this one. Okay, again I'm getting an error. So let's see. 404 not found. So there is some error in which we are posting the data. Let me just quickly check it. Okay, so the reason we get this error is I have like used two forward slashes here. So that's the reason. And now let's see whether it is working. So I'll run this one. I'm getting this error again. Okay, so the reason we are getting this error is, so this P has not been changed yet. So still I get this key error. So I'll do one thing. I'll stop this implementation and run all the cells from the start so that this change is being reflected. So I'll go to my runtime, disconnect and delete my runtime. So when I do this, so all the files that I have uploaded and all the codes that I run will be resetting. Okay. So now I'll upload my model file again, which is diabetes model.sav. Okay. Now let's rerun all these cells. So this is for installing. So you have to install all these libraries again. So that is a mandatory thing, and then we can like run each of these steps. So this is the same thing that we have done in the previous video. So the only difference is like instead of using this local host, we are using this public URL so that like anyone can access it, and you can access this URL only when this last cell is running. So if you stop this like execution of this particular cell, this URL won't work anymore. So this is why I told you that this is a temporary solution, but you can use this method in order to quickly check whether your API is working or not. Okay. So there is a warning, but I think it's not an issue. So I'll run this cell. Run app is equal to FastAPI and origins model input. We are saving the model, and let's see whether now it is working or not. So this is my public URL, and I'll copy this link address, and let me replace this link. So make sure we are like replacing this forward slash as well. Okay, now let's see whether it is working now. Yeah, now it says the person is not diabetic, right? So it seems it is working well. And here you will see that this response is 200. So 200 means the input has been stored correctly. And this is just a basic warning that we get in sklearn. So the reason we get in sklearn is we are just passing these values, right? So we are having this pregnancies, glucose and so on. So while training we will like mention this feature names as well, whereas while predicting it we will just pass this as a a list. So here you can see, so yeah, so here you can see we are just passing this as a list, so it won't contain this feature name. So that's why we get this error, but this is not like that much important for us. We can also check for a person with diabetic as well. So I'll open the CSV file. Now we are predicted for this, so the outcome is 0, so it says the person does not have diabetes. And now let's check this for this first data point as well. So I'll open this here, and pregnancy is 6. So I'll replace all these values with this first data point, 6, 148 and so on. So glucose value is given as 148, and the blood pressure is given as 72. Skin thickness is 35, insulin value is being 0, and BMI is 33.6. Yeah, 33.6, and diabetes pedigree function is 0.627. Okay, and finally the age of the person is 50. So here the outcome should be 1. That means our API should return the result as the person is diabetic. Okay, so let's see what is the result for this. So I'll run this file again. Yeah, so it says the person is diabetic. Now this is a public like API URL, so anyone can like post this data to this and they can get this result as we are getting. Okay, but this Ngrok should run, so this cell should run, so then only it can uh, it can work. Okay, so the moment you stop this execution, so this particular URL for our API won't work. So for overcoming this only, we will like deploy our API in Heroku, but that is a bit of a work that has to go there. So this will be a temporary solution that we can use in order to deploy our API in Google Colaboratory itself using this Ngrok. Okay, so I'll just give you a quick recap of what are all the things that we have done here. So first we have installed all the libraries that we need, and before that we need to get the model from this particular collab file, which is our diabetes underscore model.sav. Okay, so we have seen in the previous video as well. And after importing all these libraries, we are creating this fast API instance. And as I've told you, this API will work. So this API that we have used will work even if we don't include this origin. Okay, so but when you are putting this URL in some UI codes and all those things, in that case you might not you might get a course error. Okay, so that is why we are including this all origins, which is mentioned by this asterisk symbol, and we are mentioning the format in which the data should be passed, and then we are loading the saved model, and then we are creating the API in this step, and finally we are deploying this using this ngrok, which gives us a proxy URL that can use for the moment. Okay, and here we have tested this API. So like instead of having this Python file, we will like put this URL in some UI tool like React or other UI platforms, and then we will like post this data from here. So in real time, how this will be is, so there will be some input fields in a web browser, and the user can give these values. And once they give this value, so this data will be posted to our URL, and in the backend we can predict whether a person is having diabetes or not using this API. So this is how the entire thing works. But for this time being, we are checking or we are testing this API in this Python file itself. Okay, so I hope you have understood all things covered in this video. So all the things that you have to do is save the file from this collaboratory, and run all these cells in this second collab file, and copy this link. So this link will be changed, and you have to replace the link that I have given here. Okay, so that is very important. So this link won't work when you are running it, because I will close this collab file now. So make sure you are replacing this link with the link that you get when you run this particular ngrok cell. Okay, and once you do that, so this will probably work. Okay, so that's it from my side, and I'll see you in the next upload. Thanks for watching.